Several years ago, I was faced with a choice: stay in my comfort zone or take a leap of faith. To be honest, I was afraid. All I could think about were the potential failures. If you've ever felt trapped by fear, missing out on life-changing opportunities, you're not alone. So many of us find ourselves wondering if there's more to life than just playing it safe. But what if there was a way to overcome that fear? What if there's a source of courage that empowers us to take bold steps even when we're afraid? If you've ever longed for the courage to break free from fear and embrace the life you were always meant to live, then join me in today's program. Together, we'll explore how Jesus can help you find the strength to step out in faith. Thank you for joining me today on More to Life.
He's alone in his apartment. His thoughts are elsewhere. An email, one he's been waiting for, one that could change everything, a job offer. He has 24 hours to respond. Just 24 hours to decide his future. His mind races. He came to this country with nothing but a dream and worked hard to build the life he has now. But is this really the life he wants? Or is there something more? He needs to clear his head. So he grabs his dog and keys, and he goes for a hike, hoping the trail will help him think.
I was living and working in Southern Ontario, Canada, when one evening, while I was driving home late from the office, I received an unexpected phone call that ended with an invitation to move to the United States, the opposite end of the country, and start a new kind of work there. It was an invitation to move to the beautiful state of Oregon. And my job was similar to my current profession, but in a new leadership role. And I was excited because this was my dream job, but while I was excited about the opportunity, I was also afraid. I was afraid because this would be a different experience, a new experience, outside of my comfort zone. I was afraid of moving to another country and leaving everything I knew behind, moving to a place where I didn't hardly know anyone, and I would lose the support system I had for my family. I was afraid of making mistakes or failing and letting myself down and letting my family down. Well, in the end, I decided to take that job. I stepped out in faith and relocated with my family to the United States. And you know what? Looking back now, I see that even though I was nervous, it was one of the best decisions and experiences I've ever had. I've since moved back to Canada, but when I think back on my time in the United States at that new job, I can see that it was a time when I grew a lot, not just professionally, but as a person. I want to ask you, have you ever experienced something similar? Can you think of a time when you made a big decision and had to step out in faith even though you were afraid? But looking back now, you realize it was one of the best decisions you've made. Or maybe you're there right now. Perhaps you have had an opportunity to take a step out in faith in your career, in your relationship, your finances, your health, whatever it is. You would like to take that opportunity, but perhaps you're struggling. Perhaps it's fear that's holding you back, or doubt, or maybe you're just comfortable with the way things are and you don't want to take that risk, even though you know it would change your life. If you're there right now, I want to encourage you by looking at the story of someone in the same boat as I was, and perhaps you are in right now. And by the end of the program, I'll share with you how you too can have courage and hope as you take that next step in your life.
He's walking through the woods now, surrounded by the sounds of nature. Step after step, he can't shake the thought, what do I do? As he walks, the memories come flooding in. His journey here was no easy feat. He left behind everything familiar. The cool air brushes his face, but his mind is still on the email. The job offer is from back home. It's not as much money as he makes here, but it's enough to live on. And more importantly, it's a chance to be close to family again. The thought of seeing his parents, aging day by day without him, pulls at his heart. He's proud of what he's built here, his job, his apartment, his life. But with that pride comes a burden. The burden of keeping up appearances, of holding on to something that's starting to feel hollow. He's been sending money back home for years, helping his family from a distance. But is that really enough? Is success worth the cost of being so far from the people who matter most? And then there's the fear. The fear that if he goes back, things might not work out. What if the job doesn't last? What if he can't find the same success back home?
In this season of More to Life, we are looking at stories of people who had transformational encounters with Jesus. The encounter I'd like to look at today is about a man whose name was Peter. Peter was a fisherman by trade and the first person called by Jesus to become one of his 12 disciples. At Jesus' invitation to follow him, he left his family business and cast his lot with the carpenter from Nazareth. One evening, after witnessing Jesus teach a large crowd and perform a miracle by feeding 5,000 plus people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish, Jesus turns to Peter, along with the other disciples, and makes them get into their boat and sail across the Sea of Galilee, telling them that he will meet them on the other side. It was getting dark, and while Peter and the disciples were starting to push off from the shore, they could see Jesus dismissing the crowds that had gathered from far and wide to hear him teach all that day. Matthew chapter 14 records the story. It says, immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake, while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage. I am here." Peter, being a fisherman, was very familiar with storms on the water. But this was a particularly bad one. He and his friends were about 5 kilometers from shore, struggling to keep the boat upright in the rising waves, when suddenly, in the distance, in the middle of the night, they see someone walking towards them on the water. At first, they think it's a ghost, but soon discover it's actually their teacher and friend, Jesus. I don't know how you would react in that situation, but I'm not surprised at all that the Bible says they were terrified. What really surprises me, however, is what happens next. Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said.
He's been walking for almost an hour now, but his thoughts are still swirling. He steps over a rock, distracted, and that's when it happens. His foot lands wrong and pain shoots up his leg. He twists his ankle hard. For a moment, everything stops. He sits there, wincing in pain, alone in the middle of the trail. No one is around to help. Panic sets in. The clock is ticking. He has less than 12 hours left to respond to that email. What if he can't make it back in time? The temptation to stay in the new country gnaws at him. His boss has already offered him a promotion, more money, more security. It's tempting, so tempting to just stay here where it's safe, where he knows he'll be financially stable. But deep down, he knows that money isn't everything. He's already felt the emptiness that comes with it, hasn't he? The long nights, the loneliness, the sense of never truly belonging. But right now, all he can think about is getting back to his car. The path ahead looks longer than before.
Why would someone want to step out of their boat, the one place with some semblance of safety, in the middle of a storm, at night, to do something they've never done before? I'm not sure what Peter was thinking, and the Bible doesn't tell us. But I'll tell you why I think people do things like leave their comfort zones. It's because they're seeking something better or different. There's something inside of them that longs for something new, something more. They want to step out, to make the change, to take the risk, because maybe they're just tired of the mundane, everyday existence. They want to pursue a dream. What is that for you? Maybe you've been feeling a call to step out of your 9-to-5 to pursue the career you've always wanted. Maybe you know it's time to ask the person you've been dating for some time to marry you. Maybe it's time to get a gym membership and an accountability partner and actually go to the gym for a few minutes every day. Or maybe you're just tired of being chained to an addiction and you dream of being free from it once and for all. Change is hard. Change has inherent risk. But we also know that there's something more to life than sitting in our boats. So what's stopping us from stepping out? I can think of a few reasons. The first is fear. Fear is a very human reaction when we're faced with the unknown. It can be fear of failure, fear of rejection, or even fear of what others will think of me. The second is control. We like to know and control every aspect of our lives, and sometimes stepping out of the boat means we have to have faith that everything will work out in the end, even though it might not happen exactly the way we want it to. The third is comfort. We like things the way they are, and change can be uncomfortable at times. The truth is, no matter how beautiful your comfort zone is, nothing ever grows there. The fourth is perfectionism, thinking that you must get it perfect the first time, or why even try at all? And finally, the fifth, procrastination. Telling yourself that I have time, tomorrow's a better day than today to start. But what happens? You and I both know that tomorrow never seems to arrive, does it? Peter was faced with a decision. There he was, afraid because of the storm he was in, but he also had an invitation from Jesus to step out of his boat onto the water. So what happened? The Bible tells us. It says, so Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have so little faith, Jesus said. Why did you doubt me? When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Peter did it. He was experiencing a miracle. Can you imagine what it would have been like to walk on water? But not just any water, a stormy sea. One of the benefits of stepping out of our boats is that we can experience things that we could never have imagined sitting in our boats. And as Peter was focusing on Jesus, for a brief moment, all the fear of the storm around him seemed to just dissipate and was replaced by joy and wonder and perhaps even a sense of, peace. But then he took his eyes off Jesus and remembered the storm he was in. And all that fear just washed back over him, and he began to sink. If I'm honest, there are times in my life where, like Peter, things seem to be going well, and then I begin to think about the reality of my situation, the bills, the test results, the deadlines, the stress, and I panic. Have you ever been there before? It can be paralyzing. It is in those moments that we need an anchor. We need to anchor our thoughts, our emotions onto something that's greater than ourselves. The important thing to remember is that stepping out in faith doesn't eliminate the storm. It strengthens you to walk through it. But how do you know if it's worth stepping out in the first place? There are many good reasons to step out of your current situation in pursuit of something more. But is that something more worth pursuing? Is that something more worth exchanging where you currently are or what you currently have in life? If the answer is yes, then make the change. Walking on water begins with a single step of faith. You don't need to know every step of the journey. Just make the first one. What if? What if there was something you discovered that is worth pursuing? Something that if you stepped out in faith and walked towards would make the biggest positive difference in all other areas of your life. Would you consider it? I can tell you from my experience that just like Peter, the one thing worth pursuing that has made the biggest difference in my life is a relationship with Jesus. Why? You may be asking, how can pursuing a relationship with Jesus make a difference in my life? Here are just a few. Number one, Jesus is with you in your storms. We all face storms in our lives. Sometimes they're external, while other times they are internal. The storms in our lives can cause us to feel overwhelmed and afraid. Peter's fear didn't make him weak, it made him human. But here's the truth. Jesus is with him in the storm. He didn't wait for the storm to calm down before he came to the disciples. He came to them in the midst of it. And he does the same for us. Sometimes we pray for God to take the storm away, and sometimes he does, but other times he simply asks us to trust him in the midst of the storm, to step out in faith even when the winds are strong and the waves are high. Number two, Jesus is your anchor. Trying to do things on our own can maybe work for a time, but who will you lean on when you feel like you're sinking? Faith doesn't mean that fear completely disappears. Peter certainly still had fear when he stepped out of his boat. Faith, however, is the decision to trust God even in the face of fear. Faith doesn't deny the reality of the waves, but it trusts in the greater reality of God's power and his presence. Jesus was walking on the water, defying the very thing that was causing the disciples to fear. In the same way, God calls us to trust in him, to step out in faith and lean on him when we need that anchor. Number three, Jesus can change your life. There are many miracles in this story, from Peter walking on the water to Jesus calming the storm. Here's the thing, Jesus can and wants to perform miracles in your life as well. What are the storms you're facing right now that you need help with? What are the things that you're going through that are too big for you to handle on your own? Jesus wants to help you. But what if? What if the real miracle is getting to know Jesus? Where you get to know him so well that you discover he can meet all of your needs.
He's almost at the trailhead now, hobbling down the last stretch of the path. His ankle throbs with every step, but he keeps moving. He has just a little time left. Sweat drips down his face. He's alone, afraid, in pain. And that's when he sees it. A sign posted by the trailhead, weathered by the elements but still legible. It's a verse from the Bible. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. The words hit him like a wave. Prosper you, hope, future. He realizes that he's been looking at this all wrong. He's been putting his trust in money, in success, in security. But what if there's something more? What if the real plan for his life isn't about what he's built here, but about something deeper, something more meaningful?
I'd like to take this moment to just share with you a few practical questions that can help you on your journey this week. Number one, ask yourself, what is my boat? Your boat represents anything that holds you back from experiencing true fulfillment in your life. And maybe that's fear, maybe it's doubt for you, I don't know. Maybe it's a past mistake, or simply just being uncertain about the future. Whatever it is, you know that it's holding you back from living a life of meaning and purpose. Name it, write it down. You know, there's something about just writing it down that makes it practical. Once you've written it down, number two is ask yourself, what would I miss out on if I don't step out of my boat? Think about what experiences and miracles you would miss out on in your life if you don't step out of your boat, even in the midst of a storm. Number three, and finally, ask yourself, what is one small step of faith I can take starting this week? Faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing the one who does. What if Jesus is calling you out onto the water towards Him? Would you step out of your boat? What would it look like for you to take one step towards Him today? A few examples could be talking to someone you trust about it, maybe starting to read the Bible, or saying a short prayer to ask God to strengthen you to face the storms that you're facing right now. If you're ready to step out of your boat, to take that first step towards a life of meaning and hope, then don't wait. Reach out, take that step and see what happens. It could change your life. You can learn more about what it means to follow Jesus by visiting our online Bible school, hopestudy.ca. There, you can find free interactive Bible study guides that will give you answers to your deepest questions and give you hope for tomorrow.
He sits in his car, phone in hand, the decision looming. The pain in his ankle is still there, but it's fading into the background now. His mind is clear. He's spent so long chasing success, afraid to let go of the comfort he's built. But now, he sees that there's more to life than just security. He thinks about his family, about the life he could have back home. It won't be easy. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's not supposed to be easy. Maybe it's about stepping into the unknown, trusting that there's something greater waiting for him on the other side. He's going home. Not because it's safe, not because it's easy, but because he knows that on the other side of fear, there's something worth finding. Something bigger than money, something deeper than success. He's ready to take that step into the unknown, ready to embrace the life that's waiting for him.
In conclusion, remember, faith isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to trust God in the midst of it. Just like Peter, at some point, you might start to sink. But when you call out to Jesus, He's right there to lift you up. So this week, I challenge you, don't let fear hold you back. Take that step of faith, no matter how small, and trust that God is with you every step of the way. Jim Elliot was an American Christian missionary who, along with 4 other missionaries, were killed in Ecuador in 1956. He famously said these words, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose." What if you decided today to give Jesus a chance? He is calling you out onto the water where He is. He's calling you to put faith over fear, and He promises to be with you and catch you when you fall. I would love to join you on this journey. I want to invite you to connect with me on social media. Until next time, remember, you don't have to let fear keep you from experiencing a life of meaning and purpose. Find the courage to step out in faith and walk towards Jesus, and you will find that in Jesus, there's more to life. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch More to Life. I hope it will make a positive impact on your life. I'd like to take a moment to invite you to partner with Hope Channel Canada as an agent of hope. Here are 3 ways you can do that. Number 1, through your prayers. By praying for this ministry, you are partnering with us and asking God to use programs like this and many others on Hope Channel Canada to share the good news about Jesus with Canadians. Number 2, through your time. If you are able to volunteer, please see agentsofhope.ca for more information on how to do so and the areas where you can give of your time. And number 3, through your financial support. Your financial contribution helps Hope Channel Canada with ongoing production costs as we continue to provide valuable, life-changing programming across Canada. You can donate online by visiting agentsofhope.ca. And thank you for partnering with us and making Hope Channel Canada possible. You've been offered a potentially life-changing opportunity. If everything works out well, people will be jealous of you. However, if this goes wrong, you will become a laughingstock. Making a decision like this requires a great deal of wisdom. Would you become paralyzed by fear? Or would you be reckless and just grab this opportunity without thinking twice? No matter how you feel about it, I need to tell you that there is more to life.